Welcome, AP Psychology students. Today's video is over Module 76, which is really about group dynamics. So what happens when groups of individuals get together? How do they think? How do they behave? What are some of the outcomes? And so we're going to jump right into it. And there's a lot of different things here. We're going to focus on about 5 key terms that exemplify group behavior to the greatest extent. So the first thing, it says, how does the presence of others affect our performance? And this kind of goes back to Yerkes Dodson with the whole like arousal and performance relationship, if you remember that. And if you remember, we tend to do better on things that are difficult if we have lower arousal, and we tend to do better on things that we find to be easy if we have higher arousal. Well, needless to say, the presence of other people generally raises our arousal. And so what we have here, it says the presence of others leads to the most likely response regarding our performance. What that means, if you are good at something and having people come watch you do it will make you do it even better. If you're a pretty good speaker and people come watch you, you'll probably give an even better performance. Like it'll raise your arousal a little bit, it'll sharpen you. If you're not a great speaker, other people come watch you, it might make you a little more nervous because you don't think you're very good, and then your arousal's too high, and then your performance dips. So this is called social facilitation. So when your performance is improved in the presence of other people. So maybe, you shoot baskets playing basketball, and normally you hit 7 or 8 out of 10. But when people come watch you, you hit 9 out of 10. Your percentage goes up. But maybe you're not so good and you only hit 5 or 6 out of 10. And then people come watch you and you're only going to hit 3 or 4 out of 10. And it kind of explains a lot when it comes to like sports and stuff and like home team advantage. Like that's a real thing. Having the crowd on your side and cheering you on. And what you find is that the people who play best in front of the crowd are the best players. And then sometimes the more mediocre players will do worse under pressure and when there's a lot of people watching them. It doesn't have to only be, sports though. We tend to work out harder if other people around us are working out harder. We tend to drive faster if the people around us drive faster. But again, improved performance or increased performance in the presence of other people. Social inhibition is just kind of the flip side when we do worse when other people come watch us. So if we're not very good and people come watch us and we do worse, that's called social inhibition. So but they're kind of just opposite sides to the same coin. And so again, understand that connection to Yerkes Dodson with social facilitation. The next one is social loafing, which is a reduced effort when we're working in a group and we are not going to be evaluated individually. So we're going to be evaluated just as a group, not as an individual. So this is basically every group project ever. So if it's not going to be you personally being evaluated, it's just the group, you feel less invested and you're more likely to give less effort. And so there's lots of studies that have backed this. There's one talked about in the book about people playing tug of war, and if people thought there were others on their team, they blindfolded them, and if they thought there were other people on their team pulling behind them, they gave about 1/3 less effort when they measured like how hard they were pulling than if they thought they were the only one pulling the rope. And so the reason for this, again, people feel less responsible for the outcome. So they don't feel like they need to put forth as much effort as if it's all about them. Think about an individual sport versus a team sport. You can see groups of people that are more likely to socially loaf. That's recent research and kind of interesting. So you got social facilitation, you got social loafing. And so the key difference in knowing when one will happen versus the other, social facilitation is going to happen when we individually are going to be evaluated. Here you got the swimmers swimming against each other. And social loafing is going to happen when it's not the individual being evaluated, it's the group being evaluated. So just, that's a key way to tell the difference between the two, when you will be improved by the presence of others versus you'll give less effort in the presence of others. Here you got a little checkpoint. You can take a minute, see if you can come up with some examples of how the two terms would help or hinder your performance on a group presentation in one of your classes, and then understanding how it relates to Yerke's Dodson law, and then how would you change group work, knowing what you know about social loafing. So pause, take a second, and come back. Okay, so with social facilitation, if you have other people in class who you can tell like, oh, they're kind of working hard on this assignment, and I don't want to look bad in comparison to them. So if they're working hard and they're putting a lot of effort in, I might do that too, just so I can kind of keep up with them. Maybe my grade doesn't rely on it, but if I see these other people just doing really well, giving really good speeches, I might want to do the same so I'm not embarrassed. Social loafing, again, if you're given a group project, you might be the person who's the victim of that and has to do all the work for the group, or you're the person who just says, oh, whatever, so-and-so will take care of it. I'll be over here on my phone if you need me. So that would obviously hinder performance. In what ways could social facilitation connect to the Yerke's Dodson law? Again, remember that performance and arousal relationship, the presence of other people raises arousal. So if it raises your arousal into the sweet spot, where you're like, okay, this is right where I need to be to do the best, then it helped you. But if you were already kind of up there and then your arousal was increased even more, now your performance is going to dip. You're a little bit too jittery, a little bit too nervous. And then, how should group work be constructed or modified? The key thing that educational researchers would say is to make sure that individuals are being evaluated, not groups. So don't give group grades. And I don't know if that's happening a lot in your other classes. I try not to do that as much as possible. I don't do a lot of group projects. We do like one all year, but that's one key thing you could do, is to make sure it's the individual, not the group. A couple other terms. This one's a little more complicated. The first two are pretty straightforward. This one's a little more complicated. So it's pronounced de-individuation. So it says a psychological state in which a person becomes submerged in the group and loses the sense of individuality. So you kind of get caught up in the moment. You got that mob mentality. So when does this happen? I always wonder, I watch a lot of sports, and like a team will win the championship, and then all of a sudden, if it's Detroit or Cleveland or LA or whatever, like there's riots in the streets. You're like, what's going on here? So what's the catalyst? What happens? And so de-individuation occurs when you have one who believes that they cannot be held personally accountable for their actions. There's an element of social loafing here, like, well, everybody else is doing it, and so I'm not really doing anything bad. I'm not going to stop other people from doing it, kind of thing. There's other people around you doing it, so you kind of do it just to fit in. You also feel anonymous, kind of this idea of like, well, they can't catch us all. And you sometimes see people engaging in inappropriate behaviors when they're wearing, face coverings or sunglasses over their eyes, and they feel like they can't be seen, and so they don't feel as accountable. Then they feel like they can't be seen when they're doing it. One's attention is shifted away from internal thoughts and standards and towards stimuli in the immediate environment. So they have heightened arousal. They're not thinking straight. They're all about what's going on around them. So the presence of other people raises the arousal. There's some social facilitation there. There's some social loafing, because it's like, well, I don't feel like I need to do as much here because other people will take care of the inappropriate behavior. And then there's some conformity, because it's like, well, if other people are breaking in and shattering windows and taking stuff, like, that seems to be the social norm right now, so I guess I'll do that. So basically this is mob mentality, and kind of what are some of the situations that serve as a spark for the mob mentality. And there's social unrest and things, but what's the antecedent right before when the actual mob mentality starts breaking out? And then group polarization, pretty straightforward. So it says when the presence of a group strengthens your initial attitude. So we oftentimes tend to hang out with people who share a lot of our beliefs. So if I have a strong belief about a political opinion or a candidate, and I'm around other people that believe similar things to me, we sit around, we talk, we basically reinforce each other's views. And what you have then is all the people that support candidate A, they move further and further one direction, and then all the people for candidate B, they're all talking together, reinforcing each other's views, and they move in the opposite direction. And pretty soon, you've got two sides who are, vast amount of space apart. And so it doesn't have to only be politics, but politics is such an easy example. But, it could be any kind of controversial topic or belief system, religion, those kind of things. And so again, you're around these people that agree with you. It leads to confirmation bias. You seek out those people that agree with you. You spend more time with them. You get your beliefs reinforced. False consensus effect. You have this idea that that's the idea that people believe what you believe and behave the way that you behave more than they really do. So when you're only around people that support your candidate, you're like, I don't even know anybody who supports this other guy. Like, how would that person win? Or how, you can't even wrap your head around it because you're not even around those people to know that they exist to the extent that they actually do. So that can, to some degree, explain some of our cultural and political divide today. And then groupthink. So what we have when groups get together, they sometimes make really bad decisions. Because a lot of times when groups get together, they're more about let's come to an agreement. We got to get everybody on board, as opposed to tolerating some ambiguity and some dissension. We got to get everybody to agree. And so what you oftentimes have happen is called groupthink. You get someone who kind of speaks loud, speaks first. Oftentimes there might be a kind of an authoritarian or very bottom down person. They make a recommendation, they say what they want, and everybody kind of falls in line, and nobody wants to speak up and kind of rock the boat. So you get this group, they're totally insulated. They don't think about the beliefs of people around them. They're not even aware a lot of times of the beliefs of people around them. They become very overconfident. Again, you got a lot of conformity and obedience. You got that strong leader, and everybody just kind of falls into line. And then group polarization. That leader surrounds themselves with people who are like-minded and maybe say what the leader wants to hear, and they're insulated from those outside views. And so there's some examples here on the slide of where this could happen, but you basically you just kind of sit back and think about times where groups, maybe it's a company or something, makes a really terrible decision. They make a really tone-deaf ad or something. You're like, what were those people thinking to put out that ad? Or what was that company thinking to make that decision? Well, they had these group of people. They all were like-minded. They all thought the same way, and they didn't consider outside views. So the best thing you can do to overcome groupthink is to actively seek out people with opposing viewpoints and bring them in to the group and say, hey, you should pick apart what we're doing and what we're saying and find the holes in it. But unfortunately, we don't have a lot of, and this isn't just political, this is a lot of corporations, a lot of, schools, a lot of social hierarchies are set up in a way that we don't seek out outside opinions. The leader knows what they want. They surround people that agree with them, tell them what they want, and they don't want to hear outside views. At least, businesses or entities that are more likely to fail do that. So all kinds of historical examples of groupthink. So kind of leave you with this little practice FRQ. We'll probably go through this one in class, but see if you can come up with some examples with these terms and how they would relate to a heated rivalry game between Johnston and Urbandale. So I think that is it for now, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, guys.